Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the first race in the second round of the 2021 eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series, live from iRacing's virtual Knoxville Raceway in Knoxville, Iowa. James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports here, alongside Evan Pashonko, Josh Lee, Jeff McConey, Justin Prince down on pit road, and Ryan Bauer producing all the sights and sounds this evening with cameras provided to us this evening by Dougie Beard. And this is where the Road to Pro that you knew ends, because we enter the second round of the revamped Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series, brand new for 2021. Gone are the days in which everybody can run the full season. We've run about half the season. We've cut the field. It is only the top 70 that remain. They've been snaked into two different races. So we've got our race here tonight and then the other one on twitch.tv/podium2. So coverage of both races across the board on the Twitch channels, but it's the top 70 from here on out that are going to fight it out for one of 20 positions in the eNASCAR Road to Pro Contender Series that will come your way later this fall. Now, let's take a look at how we got here and look at the schedule for the season, Evan Pashonko. You see a lot of mile and a halves, a lot of short tracks mixed in on the front end, but you've got some wild cards here, much less of a mile and a half presence, only 2 mile and a half races in the final 7, and a wide variety of tracks. Maybe none better exemplified than tonight in Knoxville, where we're going to go dirt racing for the first time in a while in this series.
Yeah, it's not a race that if I was a driver, I would want to have to start with, right? You just got over the monumental task of racing into round number 2. There's a lot of pressure setting in. I would have preferred at least 1 week to get myself settled in, right? Instead, you're going to get arguably the biggest of those wild cards right off the bat. I think most drivers, unless the select few who are real big fans of dirt race that are coming into this race just hoping to survive, get away with some points, and then really go to work at a real fun intermediate track at Homestead in a couple of weeks.
So there's a look at your schedule for where we've been and where we were. Here were the final points for round 1. Josh Lee, and we see a few tweaks here. It was originally top 70, and then there were a few shuffles. Anthony Burrows sliding in for Isaac Gann for Clickerman Sport in the Coke Series, so he automatically jumps up there, gets to skip all this, and then Case and Plot pulling out for personal reasons. So Aaron Rodgers and Logan Helton get the nod, and that gives you the 70 drivers that will contest the next few months of racing in the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series.
And looking down this list of 70 drivers that will take the green flag here tonight at the Knoxville Raceway, there's a lot of them we haven't seen here on Podium Esports in the first split or on STN Racing in the second split. There's a lot of names from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, maybe even as far down as the 6th split that made it into the top 70 that we're going to see go racing for the first time here on Podium Esports and over on Podium 2 tonight in the snake splits for the top 70.
Big time names across the board, drivers who have come up and found themselves quick in open sessions, drivers who have Coke Series experience from years past in round number 2. Lots of names that we need to pay attention to over the course of the second round and second part of the season. But let's focus in more on Knoxville Raceway. Jeff McConey, what do we need to know about this dirt track?
Well, it's unlike anything else that we have seen out here so far this season, but taking a look around, it's a 4-corner dirt track and it is awfully wide. Lots of room to race all around the track. It's going to be slick though after just a few laps. It was opened in 1878 in Knoxville, Iowa, USA. It's half a mile long. It's Zook clay, and it's banked at 8 degrees in the corners, but you could have fooled me if you told me it wasn't. So right now we're seeing the track isn't too slick, but it definitely does have a little bit of grip loss on the bottom. So be aware that a lot of drivers are going to be all over the track. Right now, turns 3 and 4 on entry are slick as can be. So already right off the bat, we're going to see a lot of trucks out here. And if the track's already worn in by the time they're taking the green flag, I can guarantee you it's going to be gone quickly.
And this is almost a bit of a different format just so far as dirt racing is concerned. Normally, you have heats that will qualify you to the main. You have that in the real-life NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. But here, it's just simple as always. Qualify for a little bit and then go racing. In tonight's case, it's a 100-lap race that'll go for 50 miles, 80 kilometers. You're not going to have to worry about fuel, but there are 2 sets of tires available to you in the pits and 3 green-white checker attempts if we need them. But Jeff, tires don't really matter. Damage doesn't really matter all that much. So, and fuel isn't really a factor either. So if those are largely out of the equation, what does matter in order to get a good finish out of this track tonight?
Track position and driver skill. You have to be able to adapt to the different conditions. We're going to see from the start of this race that drivers are going to migrate north up the track further and further and further until they're all the way up at the wall, until finally that lane up at the wall will slick off, and then it's open season. You have to find any grip that you possibly can anywhere on the track. It's gonna be difficult once that top lane greases off. So right now you'll be able to see it. Well, if the track is shiny, that's where you want to avoid. You have to keep the rear tires out of it. These are rear wheel drive trucks. Keep the rear tires out of the slick. That's the greasy stuff where it's already been worn through. Keep the rear tires out of it because that's where you're putting the power down. You can put the front tires in there and be okay, but you're going to see those drivers are going to get as close as they can to the slick, that shiny, oily looking stuff on the track, and stay right above it because that's where the speed is. And once the entire track slicks off, it's going to be a free-for-all and slide jobs galore.
Just taking a look at the weather conditions before we go green flag racing, and these will largely carry over into the race session as well. Currently 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 66 degrees Fahrenheit track temp, winds headed to the east and now at 3 miles an hour under partly cloudy skies. The in-sim time, July 10th. 2021. So this upcoming Saturday, day after the Truck Series is going to go racing here in real life, they'll be in action tomorrow night. Humidity sitting at 68%. But Jeff, as the sun goes down, we expect those temperatures to drop. This track should pick up a little bit more grip, and that'll be part of the reason why you see the main line shift from the bottom to the top as the race progresses over the course of the evening, no?
Well, yes and no. I would agree with you fully if this were an asphalt track, but on dirt, it's not so much about the temperature and the weather, it's more about the track conditions. And we're starting out with a track that's already fairly worn in. You can see all around, you can sort of see it there that it's already started to slick off. Sometimes you don't get a fresh track with iRacing, and that's what we've gotten here. So the more the track is worn in, the more drivers will have to move up the track. Even when it gets dark and cooler, that's not going to make too much of a difference. What's far more important for dirt racing is the track conditions, and it's already starting to look pretty slick.
And where the rubber is or is not. That'll change things significantly over the course of the evening as we get set to bring you the starting grid. Last few moments of qualifying wrapping up here, and then we'll take you to the lineup for this 100-lap race. And this first race of 2, we've got an A race and a B race, and a first race and a second race, and they're even roughly in strength of field. They've been snaked between the top 70 drivers, and if you want to see both splits and both races, head over to twitch.tv/podium2. The Podium 2 channel has coverage of the other race, eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series this evening. Cody Bias with the fast time in this race, 21.707 puts him atop the board next to Jeremy Davis, Colin Keister, Brendan Kaler, Blake McCandless, Drew Freenage completing the first 3 rows, Evan.
A couple of big names back here in the next set of drivers, including Adam Gilliland just inside of the top 10, and Mercurio behind. We'll start from 11th on row 6.
Down the next couple of rows, Jordy Lopez Jr., he's been a big name all season long. Can Michael Guerrilla get back up to the top step of eNASCAR? Nicholas Shelton and Casey Tucker will round out your top 18.
Timo Toika will start in 19th with Jeremy Allen in 20th. 21st goes to Dylan Jones, Garrison Hogan 22nd, Benjamin Nelson, and Brian Johnson are in row 12.
Michael Finlayson for Lockdown Racing headlines our next page of starters, but speed from some other teams as well. High Performance Motorsports with 3 drivers here in the back, and Mitchell Hunt, Frank DeAngelis, and Nick Morse.
And then at the back, Corey Carpenter, Ryan Hill, Brian Lockwood, Derek Bordeaux, and Seth Knoll. They got some work to do. They're starting on the rear for this 100-lap sprint.
deep in the field, but it's not impossible to make your way towards the front. As we take a look once again at the track facts, we are at Knoxville Raceway in virtual Knoxville, Iowa. This track opened in 1878 and known as the sprint car capital of the world, home to the annual Knoxville Nationals, the biggest race in dirt sprint car racing and the biggest race of the World of Outlaws season. And tomorrow night, going to play host to the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series for the very first time in real life. A half-mile surface, which is a lot of fun to get around and not necessarily the easiest to conquer, though it looks simple on paper. Jeff McConaughey, this place can be very deceiving in that sense.
Absolutely. This is a difficult racetrack to get around, and you can sort of just send it in and all of a sudden you're sliding. What worked a lap ago won't work this lap all the time. So every single lap you're adapting, you're trying something new, you're changing it to keep up with this ever-changing racetrack. And you will see the line that these drivers are following is going to move, it's going to shift. I know I sound like a broken record saying that, but you have to understand how important it is for these drivers to find the grip that they need. They're starting on a worn-out track. It's only going to get worse from here. A lot of these drivers have been running C opens to try and simulate it, but I've run a couple of them and I haven't seen more than 20 drivers in one. We have 35 out here. This track is going to slick off very quick.
35 trucks in this race and in the other race, race 1 and 2. 70 drivers about to begin the next leg of this eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series that will carry us through July and through August and through the end of September, when we'll go to Phoenix Raceway with these trucks. And on the very last day of the month, September 30th, we will find out which 20 drivers advance to the eNASCAR Road to Pro Contender iRacing series that will take place later this fall. But it's time to stop the talk, time to go racing, as we at Podium Esports say thank you for tuning in, and we are underway with the second round of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from Knoxville Raceway.
And it's a good start for Cody Bias. He'll pull up at a turn number 2, maintain the race lead, and now the fight's going to be for second. Early challenge, and down on the inside in the fight for second is Colin Keister. Trying to make some moves, nose to nose for second as that Bias machine opens it up out front.
Fast drivers at the front, and drivers who know how to get it done. 2 former Coach Series drivers pacing this field for the moment, but speed just a little bit further back too. Look at Brendan Kaler, look at Blake McCandless, look at company all around the top 5. They're already starting to bounce off of each other, and we're only a few laps in, Josh.
McCandless also trying to run the bottom of the racetrack. He'll go down to the inside of the 36. Look for that spot. It looks like already, James, drivers are starting to experiment from top to bottom, starting to find exactly what lane is fast as we're on board. Drew Farinage trying to cut his way through the field. He's right behind the battle in front for P4 between McCandless and Kaler.
Freenage has separated himself just a little bit from the 2 drivers behind him, Liam Brotherton and Adam Gill, and he's closer to the battle ahead of him between Donovan Strauss and Blake McCandless. Strauss, of course, your most recent winner of the top split to wrap up round 1. He was dominant at Dover. The question, Jeff McConaughey, is whether or not that dominance that he displayed at Dover and at Darlington earlier in the season carries over into round 2.
Well, if you want a racetrack where you're just throwing a dart at the wall to see what sticks, it's Knoxville. Right now, these guys, most of them are not dirt drivers. We're used to seeing strengths of field up in the 7,000 range. It's about 2,200 for this race because it's off of the dirt oval license. These drivers aren't dirt oval drivers. They're asphalt oval. That's their specialty. And this is putting them to the test. So right now we're seeing who is going to be strong here at the beginning. But keep in mind, this track's going to change a lot. Who's strong at the start may not be strong at the finish. We talk about that with the changing weather and time of day on asphalt. You have to have your truck set up to run in the slick here because this track's going to wear out. So Cody Bias, he's fast right now, but we'll have to see how the truck is in the slick. I think someone to keep an eye on, though, Donovan Strauss. He's been strong all week in his practices. He's been very confident, and we talked about it in the last race where we needed someone who is going to be able to adapt to the different scenarios, different things thrown at them, and the name that came to mind for me was Donovan Strauss. I'm going to stick with that here and say that he's going to have a really good, strong run here, as well as at the road courses through the second round.
Another driver who looks to be strong and has shown speed not only in this season, but in seasons past, we're riding on board with right now. From Logitech GL2C Sports out of Bayonne, New Jersey, Jordy Lopez Jr. And Josh Lee, you noted him earlier, said that he was really, really quick in practices, and it's like it's showing now. He's already up a few spots from where he started when we took the green.
Yeah, we were on board with him there for a moment as well, as we'll hop up to Brian LaPrade in the 35. But in the case of Jordy Lopez Jr., he was wheeling that thing through the corner. You could see him going more than full lock over to the right to try and catch the car. It's usual on dirt tracks to have that back end slide out, and you can see it from every single truck in this field. Sliding out seems to be fast, and it seems to be the way to go, and everybody's starting to work their way up to the outside line as well. You see Jordy Lopez Jr. really sliding that thing in, really trying to catch it. Seems to be doing him well as he's cutting his way through the field in 12th. Stack up further up the field involves it's Keister and Zavis, and you can go all the way down to Kaler and Strauss. Farinage now in this battle with McCandless at the tail end as they work their way through turns 1 and 2.
Contact there. It was tight. It was very, very close between Jeremy Davis and Donovan Strauss, who bounced off of each other in 1 and 2, and they get together again in the center of the corner. They continue to bounce off of each other, and yet somehow Brendan Kaler isn't able to take advantage of it as Drew Freenage backs out 3 wide to make sure he doesn't get run over. But biggest point that I see coming out of these battles, Jeff McConaughey, the point you made before we went to the green flag, these drivers are already moving up the racetrack and towards the fence compared to where they were running at the drop of the green.
They're moving up and they're moving towards the fence. They're trying out different things. Another big thing about this racing here, this kind of racing, if you're not used to it, it's very easy to get frustrated. It's very easy to get hit and go, this guy is just banging on my doors. I'm not going to cut him any brakes. He's doing it on purpose. When in reality, everyone's just trying to hold on. Everyone's trying to keep the things under control. It's so easy, though, to all of a sudden develop that mindset of this guy's out to get me and I'm not going to let him get anything on me. That's where you see these battles start to form up here, and rivalries can quickly form with this kind of dirt track racing. You got to be careful. I think we might see some tempers flare more so than usual, especially considering a lot of these drivers haven't run near each other because this is a snake-style split for round 2.
It's an interesting point that he brings up, Evan, because Jeff's right that you are going to see drivers bounce off of each other more. And normally, you take the amount of beating and banging that happens on a dirt track. If you were to see that on an asphalt track, you would, I would say, pretty safely assured that you'd have some drivers mad at one another and try and go after each other. But I think you have to adjust your mindset a little bit on a dirt track and recognize that if you get bounced once or twice, it's all right, and you can carry on and not be in the worst of shape. Because the big thing that usually bites people here is that the moment you try and go after somebody and try and move them or move them out of the way or spin them out perhaps, the same way you would on an asphalt track, more often than not, you end up hurting yourself on a dirt track more than you do the person you're trying to go after. And it wouldn't be a surprise to see somebody spin out if they try and really throw the gloves down.
And we've heard that already over the radio. When there's contact, drivers understand that contact's just going to be a part of the race. But how about Donovan Strauss? Passing has been at a premium so far this evening. He is your biggest mover inside the top 20 trucks, up 5 positions to second. He had a bit of a failed slide job just 2 laps ago on Colin Keister. Keister fought him right back off, but Donovan Strauss now has worked his way up to second position. And as you look off the back of his number 51 Toyota, pulling away from the battle for second between Colin Keister and Brendan Kaler. So he's going to set his sights on that top spot, because through all of this, pole sitter Cody Bias has been allowed to stroll away to a 2.5 second advantage of all of this going on inside of the top 10. Look at that move way to the inside of the racetrack for Kaler there. One of the lone drivers trying to mix things up. When everybody locks into that top lane, awful hard to find some speed.
And for more on Donovan Strauss, let's head to pit road for the first time this evening and get a word from our very own Justin Prince.
To add on to the emphasis with Donovan Strauss in the preparation, he mentioned it was quite the learning curve the past few weeks for Knoxville to be able to learn about this racetrack for tonight. He said it's been different, but a fun learning curve. But the main thing he emphasized was the test races to prepare for him and his organization for this race, especially knowing how the track wears differently each and every time they run through the various test races. All that preparation is coming into play, and of course a brand new sponsor on board announced today as well on board.
did indeed announce a deal with Nutrient Ag Solutions as part of his membership in Elliott Sadler Esports. So they're going to be on board the number 51 for the rest of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. And if you were to pick drivers that you'd want to be running with, I'd have to believe that Donovan Strauss has got to be up there because, and this is a theme that we've come back to a lot, Josh, over the course of the 8-9 races in this season, but compared to last year, Donovan Strauss looks like a driver who's learned from his experiences, who had a rough go of it in the Contender Series. There's no doubt about it, but he would be the first to own up to it, and you see the fruits of his labor and how much he's dug to figure out these trucks and become a better driver all around in this year's campaign. It does feel like a night and day difference compared to last fall.
And that's exactly what he needs. And that is exactly what any driver who might have been trying to work their way up into the Coca-Cola iRacing series last season and missed out on it coming into this season, especially if they're in the top 70 right now. They need to put their head down and learn from everything that has happened in the past. Learn from the first round here in the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, as we see a little bit of contact between Liam Brotherton and Brendan Kaler. But as I was going on about, they need to use all those lessons from the past and use them now, because they need to make sure they're within that top 20, or they're going to have to spend the entire off season waiting for this moment again come 2022.
Good look here at two names that have been around the sim for a while: Brian Mercurio, Adam Gillen. This is a tough battle for 7th and 8th, and a little bit of company coming behind them as well.
We're
seeing the damage add up.
Slam the wall.
Yeah, they're starting to add up the damage as it goes on and on and on. And of course, on the left-hand side of your screen there, saw the action going on, guys, in the second split. One of the concerns with this race being 100 laps was that we didn't know how much these guys would be able to space out, right? They thought that if we spend a lot of time under the caution flag, it's going to hurt the opportunity for those drivers in the middle of the pack to make passes. And that has not been the case. It has been a very good start to this race. Drivers have, at this point, migrated all the way up to the outside wall. That's where a lot of that right rear damage is coming from. But I will say, for the first Road to Pro race on dirt in about 3 years, these guys are handling it pretty well, and drivers are being forced to get very creative with some of the moves. You're seeing that inside of the top 5.
Apologies for the technical difficulties as we carry on through this race, but smooth sailing for Cody Bias and Donovan Strauss. Not really too many battles to worry about amongst the front of the field until you get to Brendan Kaler in 4th, and then it's some good stuff right there. Drew Freeneyes, Liam Brotherton, Adam Gill, and Brian Mercurio basically trading places back and forth as everybody else amongst the top 10 strings out. And then you go a little bit further back to about 12th. You've got Michael Garilli, Garrett Conrad, Jordy Lopez Jr. and company, all trying to fight their way to the front, but struggling to find any room to run their lines, Jeff.
Yeah, it's starting to get narrow up in that top lane. Not much room at the end, so you have to be very careful. Briar LaPrade just learned that lesson the hard way. He's got some rear end damage now after getting into it with a competitor. You have to throw slide jobs. It is absolutely necessary when the track is starting to get like this. But the risk you run is if you slide up in front of somebody, they don't have to lift. If you annoy someone enough or you make a really bad slide job, if they're in a bad enough mood, they're just not going to lift, and they don't have to. They shouldn't be expected to when you're making the pass. So you have to be careful here. The lane is getting slicker up at the top. It's very close to the wall right now, especially in 1 and 2. Right now, these guys are all still learning, though, and the only car on track that's running down the leader, though, Donovan Strauss. He's been strong in the C Opens, practicing all week, and this is essentially what this race is. It's essentially a C Open. Only 100 laps, and we say only because at a dirt track where you're running 22, 23-second laps, it goes by quickly. We're already a third of the way through this race.
Already working our way through lap 33 of 100. Time flying quickly as we go back on board with Donovan Strauss and watch him continue to reel in Cody Bias. That gap is down to just under 1 second, and it continues to close. Last time by, Donovan Strauss was a full 2/10 faster than Bias, but the yellow flag comes out for the very first time this evening. Jordy Lopez slow at around in turn number 4 to bring us under the yellow for the first crack of this race 7.
Yeah, well, it figures. I talk about how they've been able to get some green flag laps underneath them, and then we get a yellow, right? But about at the 1/3 distance, there were some big movers. Guys like Bordeaux up 19 positions. The drivers, I think, were able to maximize the opening run of this race, and it's going to be a very different racetrack come the restart, so it'll be interesting.
Could be very wild indeed, as we'll try and get a look at what happened between Jordi Lopez and company 44 over and on the inside in turn number 4. Didn't look like there was too much damage, but we'll get a look here. And yes, a little bit of contact there, Josh Lee. So not too much surprise as to what happened to Jordi and what brought out the first yellow.
Yeah, and it just looked like a slam to the wall, which is not uncommon, especially here at Knoxville. A lot of these dirt tracks, and if anybody's raced also these trucks on the Eldora Speedway, same thing there. The wall seems to be that line. That is exactly where these drivers need to run. It's the fastest line around, and not the same thing here at Knoxville. And you can see top to bottom, we're already starting to see that blue groove start to work in, all of that rubber getting laid down into the dirt. Those drivers running in that, it gets super, super slick. They want to get that moisture. They want that dirt that is dirt color, not black, all the way from the top to the bottom. So looking at all the way down on the bottom of the racetrack, pretty much all the way up to the wall in turn number 1 and all the way through turn 2. They don't want to run down in that slick stuff. They want to run in that good moist dirt that right now seems to be at the very, very bottom or the very, very top.
Lights already off on the pace truck. You're not going to have too many takers coming down pit road in this race, which means your caution laps are not going to be all that long, as the pace truck will pull down onto pit road here at Knoxville, and it will be Cody Bias and Donovan Strauss that will lead us to green flag racing on lap 37 of 100. Bias gets the green flag, and off they sail into turn 1.
And this time, instead of using the bottom to get that jump, look at them both wash way up to the outside wall. Keister maintains, but once again, the fight's going to be for second. Here comes a drive by Donovan Strauss. All the momentum in the world into turn number 3, but as they race off of 4, what a defense by Colin Keister. Bump him up now into the number 2 spot, and Strauss has got his hands full as he's being chased down, and 3 wide behind them in a battle for the number 6 spot. In the middle of all of that is Liam Brotherton.
Get a good look here at just how nuts it is, but yellow flag out again. Believe we had trouble over on the back straightaway to bring us under caution for the second time, Jeff. It's like trouble for the 31 machine of Cedric Hunter. We'll take a look at the replay, but he was one of the ones that went around and was sideways right in front of Ryan Hill and company, and just one of those classic restart incidents that we see at Knoxville so much, where people will take different apexes here. You've got about 3 or 4 different lines you can run through the corner, Josh Lee, and that just looked like a classic case of lines crossing, apexes crossing, and paths crossing one another.
And it's so easy to do that too, because when you're sliding up in front of another truck, your spotter might say just a little bit too late, hey, you're not clear, don't go up, and then the contact is made, and once the contact is made, it's already all over. Very difficult to keep these cars under themselves under race conditions at a dirt track. It's completely different when you're getting hit. So trying to keep the cars under control, already a challenge. With the contact becomes near impossible, but these drivers are doing a good job of it so far. We saw a lot of great 2 wide, 3 wide. I think I saw 4 wide for one quick moment on that restart, and expecting much of the same as we enter into the halfway point of this race. We'll have 660 to go and then come across the start finish line.
While we have a moment under the yellow flag, we'll remind you that tonight's broadcast of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series is brought to you by Makoni Setup Shop, your home for iRacing setups and the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports. Legends to Cup cars, they have you covered, with dirt setups also available for late models, modifieds, wing sprints, and road setups for road racing cars as well. Coaching with professional drivers such as eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series champion Zach Novak and teammate Jimmy Mullis, River Hayes, and more are available at www.macodysetupshop.com. As we go back to green flag racing on lap 42 of 100. Cody Bias with a good jump again. Donovan Strauss to the inside, and Colin Keister up on the fence off the restart. So he'll lose some positions to Brian Mercurio and to Brendan Gaylor and to Liam Brotherton, who all go to the inside.
As that blue groove widens out, he tried to tiptoe through it, and both Faridaj and a couple of other drivers behind followed him right into the fence. He restarted in third position. Colin Keister that time by the start-finish line just ahead for seventh as another caution comes, third on the evening.
Yellow flag out again. We'll see if we can figure out where it started, but looks like there was trouble over in turn 4 with Jeremy Allen's machine.
Tough break for Jeremy Allen as well. Was having a relatively good night, qualified far up the order, and it just looked like the 36 as well kind of went a little bit too far into the corner, maybe tapped the wall as well, got into the back bumper. It actually doesn't look like they made contact. The two got a little bit too loose, and then the contact was made down there in turn 3.
Yeah, what ended up happening there with Finlayson, who was behind him, is when the 2-car bounced off of the wall, your natural instinct is to hit the brakes and try and go up above it because the car is going to go low. Problem is, when you hit the brakes here in a dirt track, it just throws the thing left. So he's trying to avoid him. He hits the brakes. You can see the front lock up a little bit, but it just throws the truck left, and there's nothing you can do. You don't so much slow down when you hit the brakes here. You more throw the truck towards the inside wall.
And as they throw the truck towards the inside wall, the other part that we didn't get the chance to talk about, Jeff, regarding McConaughey Setup Shop, not only do you have a new deal with Jimmy Mullis and Zach Novak, but you've got a new ebook, How I Drive, with a foreword by NASCAR Cup Series driver Anthony Alfredo. Tell us a little bit more about that project, because I know you've been working on that one for a while.
Yeah, that was a project I took on myself. I sort of was winding down my last semester here at Purdue University, and I just said, you know what? I want to write a book. I want to put my thoughts down and get ideas out. So I ended up writing about 35 pages worth of information about what equipment you need, how you should approach hitting the track, things you need to do. And then I sent a copy of it over to Anthony. I asked for his thoughts because Anthony and I are really close friends, and I asked if he wanted to write the foreword for it. He said absolutely, he'd be happy to help out, and that's how that whole thing came together. But yeah, it's $14.99 over on the website. It's got a lot of great information in it, and it'll teach you how I drive and how you should too. And I don't know, maybe some of these guys towards the back could use it because there was just a pile up coming to the green flag.
Stacking them up here as we reach halfway. Donovan Strauss heads wide, bias to the inside, but it'll slide up. Mercurio trying to work that inside groove. As Donovan Strauss got a good run off the corner, and they're going to bounce off of each other on the back straightaway, and the yellow flag will come out again. I think that was Adam Gillen that went around this side, Evan.
They're just working real hard, and that goes back to, we had that first caution after a long run, right? Drivers felt like they had opportunities to make moves, and it just feels like that they were maybe tiptoeing on that initial restart, and since then, all these incidents have been coming from the rear, and it's not really anything that Adam Gilliland does wrong in this. It's just the 4 trucks ahead of him come together 4 wide off of the corner, and he's just the odd man out that gets punted. But if there was any patience in the opening run, it is gone, and I just think closing it down halfway, you're going to be hard pressed to convince those midfield cars to take it easy going forward. I think we're going to continue to see a lot of this same on all these race starts through the second half of this race.
Quick restarts because you're not going to have that many caution laps, but we could end up in a situation where maybe that first run was the longest green flag run we're going to have, Jeff McConaughey. Do you think that that's going to play that much of a factor into things at the end of the day, or should we be worried about that in some way, shape, or form?
Well, the more laps we run under caution, the less the track gets worn in, but the more damage the cars end up taking because there's wrecks and everything else going on, and people are starting to get nervous. They're getting antsy, and what's really difficult is these drivers are now restarting in the slick. There's not much room, so on these restarts, everyone's getting pushed up to the top. You'll see both lanes all the way up as close to the outside wall as they can get, but that leaves most of the field restarting in the slick, and when you're trying to put all this power down in second, even third gear, you just spin the tires because there's no grip there in that slick stuff. So that's what sort of causes these issues, and then you end up spinning the tires, and these drivers go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I've just, I'm spinning the tires, I have no speed, I need to send it into the next corner, I need to get a good run here. And then they slide up, they lose grip, and all of these things end up happening. So you think cautions breed cautions on an asphalt track? Just imagine it here.
Justin Prince, what have the drivers been saying from their perspective about this race in this dirt surface?
Well, drivers were expecting attrition to come into play when discussing things with multiple different competitors. One described it as a potential calm before the storm type of race, and it's been that type of event. Drivers like Blake McCandless were expecting things to start picking up right around this point of the race, and we're starting to see that come into play. So it's now the matter of getting into a rhythm. These drivers trying to stay nice and loose on the radio and nice and loose in their respective trucks right now.
As they go around on the back straightaway, Blake McCandless was one of the ones to go sideways, and there were about 5 or 6 others that I saw out of the corner of my eye. We'll have replays up momentarily, but there were about 5 or 6 cars that were 3 or 4 wide coming down the front straightaway, and they just ended up running out of room at the end of it all. Not much that you can do in a situation like that, Evan.
Yeah, there's really no good place to put these trucks, right? To Jeff's point on the restarts, is the whole thing has slicked out. We saw it notably up towards the front of the field, right? The trip into the fence that Colin Keister had about 2 restarts ago, and that's exactly what happens here, but everybody else just follows that first truck that gets into the fence, into the wall, right? It's at the 10 who has all those issues. McCandless was on the scene quickly. He got turned. Corey Carpenter ended up turned. He was into the outside wall. That was one where if there's a lane that you should be in, it's that top. But when you get too many trucks up there and then you get one mistake, it's not an asphalt track. You can't just lift. You can't just hit the brakes to avoid somebody. You're going to slide into that mess. And that's where these race cars are going to really start to take a beating. They can take a lick and keep on ticking, but when you continuously, at least in that mid-pack, have minor incident after minor incident, you're eventually going to feel the effects of that once you get to this point in the race.
As our drivers regroup and get set for the upcoming restart, we'll tell you about some of the events coming up in the world of Podium Esports and iRacing. And we continue coverage Sunday night, 9:15 p.m. Eastern, with the season opener for the MPI Cup Series from Daytona International Speedway in the Next Gen car. The MPI Cup Series will go Next Gen racing for the entirety of Season 4, and that broadcast will be found on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. Following night, Monday Night Racing runs their All-Star race featuring the Radical SR8s at Texas Motor Speedway. Coverage starts at 7:45 p.m. Eastern for pre-race, 8 p.m. Eastern for the main show on twitch.tv/Podium2. And then the Coke Series from New Hampshire the following night on iRacing's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. As we go back to Green Flag Racing, Cody Bias on the gas again. Donovan Strauss just needs a lap or two, I think, to try and get a run on him, Jeff and Cody. The question is, will he get a lap before we get another yellow?
That $1 million question, as he's right there at that left rear quarter panel now, looking for the speed on the run off. He's not going to be able to find it. Bias dives to the bottom. Strauss is going to try and ride the outside, gets up there, kisses the wall just a bit, trying to get everything out of it, and he's back at that back bumper. But Bias now on the defensive. Strauss goes in, thinks better of it, and he's now following in the tire tracks of Cody Bias.
You figure Donovan Strauss is going to be really aggressive here, Josh Lee, as they bounce off each other, because I think Strauss knows just as well as anybody we may not get a long green flag run again in this race. This may be one of his best shots to try and wrest the lead away from Cody Bias.
There's the send to the bottom for Strauss, but it's not going to be able to stick. Now pulling away, it's Cody Bias. Here comes to the back bumper of Strauss. As Strauss slams the wall, they're going to be 3-4 wide now for second place all the way down to the bottom of the racetrack. It's going to be Derek Bordeaux who tried to get it in the middle, 3 wide. They're slamming into each other heading into turn 2, all the way up by the wall. It's now Strauss on the inside. Bordeaux, Keister, Farinage is there, Mercurio there, as well as they all fight back into turn 1.
Within one lap, Donovan Strauss got the shot of his life from Byron Mercurial heading into turn 1, and then chopped the nose off, the front fenders off, and then some from Derek Bordeaux entering turn 3. And a lap later, it's as you were, and Donovan Strauss now has the space to start setting those lap times that were so quick at the end of that first green flag run. He was running down Cody Bias to the tune of about 0.2 a second. Can we stay green long enough for Strauss to run Bias back down and have a green flag battle with him for the race lead, Jeff McConaughey?
I think we're all ignoring the fact here that Derek Bordeaux has driven from 34th to 3rd now, and he is chasing down the front of the field. Gained 31 spots at a dirt track. That is not at all easy to do. Another person that's going to be driving there like crazy is Briar LaPrade. He's fallen all the way back to 20th. He's up to 9th, the bottom of 3 wide, battling with the 36 and the 41 there, doing everything he can. Keep your eye on Briar LaPrade. He's been working his way up through the field as well. But Derek Bordeaux, 34th to 3rd. We can't ignore something like that.
And that's why Derek Bordeaux was so successful in the opening round of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, why he was 6th in points coming out of round 1, and why it's not a surprise to any of us who have been paying attention all year long that Derek Bordeaux has immediately jumped out to the front at the beginning of round number 2, although that bounce off the wall won't help him all that much, Evan.
Yeah, this is the part where when you're chasing, you're going to be forced to take it a little bit further, right? You're going to have to you got to force the issue, push the truck, and that's where you can step into mistakes like that. Those little wall touches, it's not hurting these guys. Look at Friedage, puts a slide job and takes that spot away from Keister. Bordeaux now getting eaten alive on the inside as here comes along the outside fence Brian Mercurio. You got Dylan C. Jones in the mix as well. Brendan Kaler there as well. So the outside, the place to be. You can lean on that fence, but watch that limit. You don't want to hit it too hard as up front, Donovan Strauss mounting a second. Look at the race lead right on the bumper of Bias, working lap 64.
We're starting to see it, Jeff, right? You can see it, yeah?
Absolutely, but to Evan's point there, you have to be careful when you're up at the wall. If you bounce off of it, that's one thing, but going up there and riding along it and using it to your advantage, that is something that you can get clocked on. You have to be very careful here. iRacing has put their foot down already this week on people riding along that wall, so these drivers know that, they're aware of it, so they're pushing it as much as they can, but if they're caught riding that wall, which has been mentioned in the driver's chat already, it could be trouble, so everyone be very careful now.
Good look at some of the battles a little bit further back towards the back half of the top 10. Brian Mercurio there, Derek Bordeaux, Briar LaPrade, the 36 of Brendan Kaler. A whole host of trucks fighting for positions as Donovan Strauss is still stalking Cody Bias, but he hasn't managed to get alongside him yet. So we'll go on board with Brendan Kaler, see what he can do coming off of turn 4.
Here comes Kaler off of 4, trying to work his way further and further up the field. And you mentioned Donovan Strauss. He has been trying to slide it down to the inside of Cody Bias for pretty much this entire run since he has gotten to his back bumper. Mercurio joining him up there in the top of the racetrack, and Mercurio getting great runs coming off of each and every one of these corners. But up in front with the battle between Strauss and Cody Bias, Strauss is there. He's on the back bumper. He goes to the inside, just a little bit too slick. Bias able to get up in the moisture earlier than the 51 is able to, and he just pulls him on the exit of each of these corners. You can see it again heading down into turn number 1, trying to dive it in, not there. They both get up in the moisture, but Bias is there sooner, so he gets such a great run coming off of the corner. Let's see if Strauss is going to be able to do anything. He'll stay in the moisture this time through 3 and 4.
What's so intriguing about this, Evan, is that Bias and Strauss different time. Well, okay. Yellow flag out again. We were going to talk about that battle for the race lead. Instead, we're going to see if we can figure out where the yellow flag came out on lap number 69.
It was Derek Bordeaux actually got a shot from behind when he had to check up for calling Keister. Keister checked up, Mercurio nowhere to go, goes right into the back of him, and that caused at least 5 trucks to get wrapped up in that. And Briar LaPrade slips by, sneaky beaky like down on the bottom, able to make it through.
Sneaky beaky? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, sneaky beaky.
You're making me think of like Beaker from the Muppets or something when you say
Is it like an Iowa thing?
No, it's from CSGO, but you know. Some of us are real gamers out here, and we can also moonlight on the simulator.
Something like that, right?
Aha! Okay. This all makes sense to me now. But yeah, that's actually probably the biggest wreck we've had of the evening. Maybe that and then the incident that Blake McCandless was involved in over in turn 1 and a whole host of others. But those two easily the largest wrecks we've had tonight, Josh.
I just want to say, you know, fortunate in that in the end, Pike, is Derek Bordeaux, right? You're running 5th and you get tagged like that. Normally, you can pretty much bank on the fact that you're going to be done. You spin that truck out, you are instantly down to 33rd. He actually benefited, I think it was Dylan Jones who plowed in there late, straightened out the 04 truck. It's more damage, but I would take damage and maintain that position as opposed to the opposite, right? So he's in a tricky spot. He decided to come down and try to fix that truck. Let's see if he can get back up there. He was 7th with damage. Instead, he opts to go to 33rd. I'm not sure I would have made that decision.
Off we go, back under the green flag. We race at Knoxville Raceway, coming at 25 laps to go as Cody Bias and Donovan Strauss have controlled this field from the front for just about the duration of this race. But here comes an opportunity for maybe a new leader. Drew Freenage with a good run to the inside.
Here comes Freenage in the one, trying to use that luck that he had a couple of weeks ago to make it into this top 70 to try and get a good start here in round number 2. Down to turn number 1. Here comes LaPrat is there. Keister running up by the wall with Mercurio. Down on the bottom of the racetrack, Dylan Jones is there with Michael Guerrilla. Everybody fighting for spots. Back in 4th and 5th and further on back through the top 10. All the way up to the wall is Cody Bias through turn 4. Strauss stays a little bit lower than he has been, but it's not going to help him too much. Another dive to the inside. Not going to be able to get side by side with Bias.
He was digging, but another yellow flag out further back in the field, and trouble on the racetrack as we will go under the yellow flag one more time. And it looks like Blake McCandless involved in another incident, this time, I believe, with a little bit of help from Adam Gilliland.
Yeah, that one happened to going off and into turn number 1, and you talk about sometimes when it rains, it pours. It's been a rotten night for Blake. You know, you obviously going to walk these trucks off and off of the corner, and it was a late run on exit for Adam Gilliland to squeeze in there in the battle for 21st and 22nd, and Blake just squeezed him up into the fence and ran him out of room, and Adam Gilliland in the final, you know, nearly now 1/4 distance of this race did not feel like lifting, and it made McCandless pay for that squeeze, and it's going to send him from the 20s down the running order. We're about 21st, 22nd when he was battling for that position, and it's going to be 31st as he's forced to pit road.
So he'll come down to pit road. Jeff McConaughey, you've seen a lot already in this race. Any notable trends that stand out to you?
Right now, the biggest trend that I'm seeing is we've hit that point where the top is now slicked off enough that drivers are going back to the bottom. You can take a look at Briar LaPrat. He's up 10 spots since the beginning of the race. He's been working his way forward, inching. And the way he's doing that is if we can get a shot down there at the bottom of the track, there's actually a bit of grip right at the bottom, right where there's that hill in the corners. He can stick the nose right in there as low as he possibly can and take that shortest distance around and get that teeny tiny little bit of dirt that's available there and try and build some runs. He's all the way up to 4th now, and he's been fighting up at the front. He could have something for Bias here. Strauss just doesn't seem to have the car to get around, but we'll see if LaPrat or someone else up at the front can do it. Colin Keister is now back up there after he fell back a bit, and Dylan C. Jones up from 21st to 6th. This is still anyone's race.
Very, very much so, especially when you consider how tightly the field has been bunched together all night long. Restarting to come on lap 79 as Cody Bias got one of the best jumps, if not the best jump he's had all night long, Evan, to clear Strauss by a car length and lead the battle for 3rd between Freenage and LaPrat.
And my thought process initially was that these yellow flags were going to be hurting Bias, right? That he needs to continuously go through the restarts and go through the motions. But as of late, they've actually benefited him. And you might not think that with Donovan Strauss hounding him, but we saw that in the last 10-lap green flag run, that of these two trucks, Donovan Strauss is faster than Cody Bias. But he needs a couple of laps to work that in. And if the 27 can get a jump, that's his opportunity. Strauss alongside the yellow comes out, and will the 51 be scored as the leader? Yes, he will.
What a big move from Donovan Strauss to get the lead before the yellow flag came out. That might have been about the only way he was going to make a pass of some form. Teemu Toika, the guilty party this time around, Jeff McConey, and the most recent reason why we are under the yellow flag once again.
Taking a look back at that incident, Teemu was the one that originally went around. The truck just slid out on him. And then Brian Johnson, Teemu didn't hold the brakes. He started rolling down the track. Brian Johnson thought he was going to be able to get around him, ends up hitting him and loses the entire engine. Now he's got a lot of damage. Someone else that got wrapped up, Derek Bordeaux. So a lot of good cars damaged in that incident. So that's going to hurt. That's going to definitely throw a wrench in that.
That's the yo-yo of this kind of racing in particular, because what was it, maybe 20 laps ago we were talking about how Bordeaux was up to 4th and it gained nearly 30 spots, and now we look at the order and he's back to 25th and he's lost all but 10-ish of the positions that he's gained. So a wild night for Bordeaux, who has shuffled places in the running order more than I'd argue anybody else in this race by a good margin.
Absolutely. He's been up and down and back up and back down again, unfortunately for him. And that's what's really difficult and frustrating, is when something like that happens, it's so hard to work your way back up, especially later in the race where there's just no grip out here. That's where it gets really, really difficult. You can survive with engine damage here. You can be down. I was talking to drivers earlier today and they said, yeah, 50, maybe even 100 RPM, you can be down and still be competitive because of how much you're working the throttle. But right now, that's going to be just way too much damage for him. The front end is knocked out. Everything is broken on that truck that could possibly be broken, and he's going to have to limp it home. But still, I think he might be able to put something together and have himself a good run here. He's back in 25th, but green flag up at the front. They're 3 wide.
Green flag takes off. Justin Prince, what do you have from us for pit road?
And for Cody Bias, right now the main report coming in, tight, and more tight. So that truck is dealing with a bit of handling in these closing stages. And the one thing to note when it comes to Briar LaPrade and his speed as well, he did a lot of those C Open races in preparation for tonight. One of them, he went from the back to right around where he's at right now, the top 5 by the end of it. So we're seeing similar performances to what he's seen in testing for Briar LaPrade as well.
So tight is the word for Cody Bias, who has slipped back to 3rd and nearly into the clutches of Drew Freenage, as Donovan Strauss now has control of this. How big that may be, that pass to get the lead before the yellow flag came out, Josh Lee, how much that could factor into things, especially if you don't get another long green flag run.
And we're taking a look at Bias now. JP hit on it. Tight, and more tight coming from his crew chief. You can see it, how he's running right now. Drew Farinage is there on the inside trying to use that bottom line for grip. You take a look at where the blue groove is. Forget about it. We're going to be talking about blue groove only now. Moisture is completely gone. Other than the exit of these corners, it is slick everywhere. These drivers have very little options left. They're trying to find any possible moisture they can. Bias might be able to find a little bit up on the outside. Farinage might be able to find a little bit of it all the way down on the bottom of the racetrack. But you can see right now, they're just kind of throwing caution to the wind, running wherever they can find speed. Bias trying to power around Farinage. He'll do it down into 1. Let's see if that one machine of Farinage can now work his way back side by side. He will be able to for the moment. Can't get the run off the corner. Gives second to Cody Bias, but he's still got a solid second now to make up over your leader, Donovan Strauss.
Donovan Strauss continues to pull away, and Jeff McConey, I almost feel like the cushion's by and large useless at this stage just because of the lack of moisture. We can see Cody Bias trying to run up the track and find something up there, but as it stands, little to nothing in place there in terms of grip, in terms of anything that you can lean on to make your truck get out of these corners a little bit faster.
I'm going to dare to argue that Cody Bias isn't necessarily tight. It's just he's got no grip. And those are different things in a dirt track like this. He's looking for that grip down on the bottom, and he wasn't able to find it. The setup just wasn't working in that middle groove. It would slide up to the outside, and he was able to, all of a sudden, as soon as he hit that dirt on the edge, he was able to get that good run. He was able to put the power down and keep second place there. So I don't think he's necessarily tight. I think they might have just been a little bit off in the setup in the slick. Now he's he's trying out this line here on the bottom that LaPrad's been running, Farinaj has been running, and pretty much everyone is running down at the bottom, and he's finding success down there. So I think it was more he had to find a different line, something that would work, because it wasn't finding grip in the middle rather than the truck being too tight, because he's holding on to second place now, trying to chase down Donovan Strauss.
Emphasis on that word trying, Evan Pasoko, because every time we look at the lap time counter, it seems like Strauss is either within a tenth of Bias or gaining time on Bias. And as the laps click down, it just seems like it's becoming an impossible mountain to climb for Bias and that Toyota Tundra.
He finds himself at about that we saw Donovan Strauss at earlier, right, is needing to capitalize on those restarts. Just as I was talking about how Strauss needed a couple of laps, he had his best restart, and speaking of him, you'll have another opportunity inside of 8 laps to go, another yellow.
Can we stop throwing to Evan, please? Because he's caused the last 3 cautions now, and I would really like to see it.
That's remotely true.
That is absolutely true. We're going to go back. We're going to review the track. We are going to go back and find the clip
There's
here.
been some good ones over time, but you can't force magic like that.
I mean, every time we've thrown to you, the caution has come out here as the 51 goes around and just gets beaten and banged and turns it all the way around. Everyone looking to dodge and avoid, but yeah, that's I don't know. I'm gonna pin that one on Evan Pasoko.
If we're going to be technical about it, the official reason for the caution is the spin of Tanner Love, which came as the result of contact from Ryan Hill that sent Hill into Corey Carpenter, who then sent Carpenter into Love's left rear quarter panel, and then Love goes around. And that explains why we are under the yellow flag yet again. But more importantly, Josh Lee, we are going to get no more than a 5-4 lap shootout, maybe.
And remember, I believe we do have at least one attempt at a green-white checkered also here in the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series. So could be 1 restart, could be 2, depending on how clean these guys take this restart here. But if I'm Strauss in this situation, I'm kind of looking at this as, okay, just get a good start and defend, because he has that speed, at least here late in the race after the track has slicked off. And even in the early part of this race when it was moisture all the way through, he has had an insanely fast race truck. That number 51 Nutrien AG Solutions Toyota Tundra is incredibly fast, even on this slick track surface. Just needs a good start, needs to defend over Cody Bias, and he'll be walking into eNASCAR Road to Pro victory lane and getting an amazing start to the second round.
Would be his 3rd win of the season if he can hang on to it and put together a stretch, not unlike Steven Wilson's from a year ago. We've seen how well he's gotten on in the Coach Series this year. Green flag will come out. Strauss is going to wait a little bit later in the box, but Bias spun the tires, getting back up to speed, and that'll create enough of a gap for Strauss to get to his inside and clear the 27 truck before they get to turn 2, Evan.
When he gets what he wanted, right, he has an opportunity. They're going to be 3 wide for 4th behind. A caution flag flies towards the rear again. Reset, try it again, and I think this may push us into overtime with the yellow coming out, lap number 97.
Might be a green-white checker that we get into Jeff McConey as they were wrecking all through the back.
Yeah, it's looking to be a green-white check, and I believe they have 3 attempts at him here, and we might end up using all of them. Now, up at the front, you saw that checkup on the outside, Cody Bias spinning the tires. That opened the door for Colin Keister to send it up the middle 3 wide. They were able to keep it all clean, but it really shows the aggression. Everyone now wants their piece of the cake. They want to get as much as they can. It's a lot of give and take here on iRacing, especially at a dirt track where everyone's sort of unfamiliar with the territory, but it's a lot more take now than anything else with just a couple laps to go. Get ready for a green-white checkered.
A green-white checker to set us up, at least to start. It's the first of 3 already confirmed from race control. And the question, I guess, Josh Lee, is whether or not Donovan Strauss can match that start that he got just a little bit ago.
And that was a really good start as we grab a quick look at the replay of exactly what happened to bring us under the yellow flag. It looked like Hunt in the number 34 in the back of the field got turned around. That's Mitchell Hunt, but it was a good start for the number 51. on this last restart. And now that we're in overtime, basically same thing that he did on the last restart, he needs to do here. Get the power down and get out in front, because on that restart, he got an amazing start, got on the throttle exactly when he needed to, got down to the inside and covered off Cody Bias. Let's see if he can do it again, because the number 51 will go 2 in a row if he does take this win and be the first driver, at least here on Podium Esports in this year's eNASCAR Road to Pro season, to go back-to-back.
As Donovan Strauss will have an opportunity. First green-white checker restart of the evening. We've got 2 more if we need it, but it was not a good restart for Donovan Strauss that time around. Cody Bias will be able to hang to the outside, at least for the moment, coming out of turn 2.
And the outside's going to be what he needs, but he just can't get the truck to straighten out in time. So Strauss clears for the race lead. 3 wide for second. Bias, LaPrade, Farinaj, a yellow again before they get to the white.
Second crack at a green-white checker coming up. Incidents towards the back. Trouble for some of the drivers further back in this race, and it only gets wilder from here, Josh Lee.
Yeah, we are definitely just getting the show started. That was a very close restart for Donovan Strauss. He must have been getting at least a little bit nervous there. And it looks like issues. Derek Bordeaux tapping the 30, tapping the 24, sending the 30 around on the back straightaway. And that leads us under the yellow flag here and into our second attempt at an overtime restart as well. So we're going to see who is going to get the better restart here. Can Bias power around? I think that's the main question we got to be asking.
Better question. Head to the Twitch chat and let us know whether or not you think we're going to finish under green, or whether or not we're going to burn through all of our green-white checkers and finish this race under yellow. We've got 2 more green-white checkers available to us if we need them, and we may need all of that, Jeff McCody, at this rate, because it seems like they're going to bounce off of each other in the back of the field on pretty much every restart. The question is just going to be whether or not someone goes around enough to justify a yellow flag.
We will have to see how it ends up working out. We've got the vote coming in, 14 votes so far, and most people saying 64% we're going to end under yellow. But keep an eye on Briar LaPrade. He's in third. He made the outside work, stuck it up the middle, a 3 wide, and was able to take third place. Now let's see what he's able to do here. He's fought his way up. Donovan Strauss has been strong, but let's see if anyone else has anything. Maybe Drew Farinaj need to be up on the outside. You have the 15, the 21, the 33 all behind. There is still so much that can happen here. One bad touch, one mistake from anyone could send someone around. So let's see what happens as we go back green.
Off they go. Donovan Strauss again there, joined by Cody Bias on the outside. No breathing room for the 51 just yet as they fan out behind him. A little bit of contact further back. Truck sliding around. No yellow flags yet. 28 goes around to the back straightaway, and before they get to turn 3, we are already looking at our last green-white checker. It's Seth Knoll and Casey Tucker that have gone sideways, and in Tucker's case, on his actual side over in turn 2.
Yeah, he was the one that had the issue, and he had quite the forceful spin. And at this point, some of the drivers allowing that frustration to boil over. Nothing really wrong that Casey Tucker did. He just kind of got driven through there by Michael Finlayson, who got maybe a little bit of help from Jordy Lopez Jr., but just went through the 38 in front. And obviously at the front of the field, these drivers are able to get a little bit of space, but in that mid-pack, I mean, and I think it's a product, Pike, of the splits, right, in the point structure. The fact that those guys in a mid-pack are still going to run through each other, literally, to get an extra point here or there, because that's just the format that they're presented to. You can't tell those guys at the back of the pack to take it easy. Should they? Yeah, but they really can't afford to. And I think that's what leads to guys running each other over like this.
Valid points all around. Justin Prince, any final notes from pit road before this final restart of the night?
Well, for many of the drivers, the tempers are starting to flare with the most recent caution flags starting to pop up. It was a bit of a looser feeling heading towards these final stages until about that caution with about 6 laps to go. That's when the tempers started to flare up for some of these drivers. And for some of these competitors, now it's the focus of getting to the checkered flag and get themselves dialed up for a big moment here for this race.
One more restart for Donovan Strauss to try and nail. They haven't been all that great the last 2 times, but this last one, if he can really get this done right, might be the only one that matters in the end as he tries to go for 2 wins in a row in the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series. A little bit of bouncing and banging off the door of Cody Bias before he drops down to the inside and takes off, and Bias spun the tires on the one restart he needed to nail, and that'll give Strauss about a car length to work with as they go through 1 and 2.
He was so good on the previous 2, and now look at a Bias way up to the outside wall. Here comes Briar LaPrade. He'll take over second, looking for the white flag this time.
Bias all the way up the racetrack. Strauss clear by about a car length, a truck length or 2, but the yellow flag comes out over in turn number 4, and Donovan Strauss will be able to roll under yellow to victory in back-to-back races in the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series. He conquers the dirt in Knoxville and assumes the mantle as the hottest driver in this series at this moment, Jeff McConaughey.
Donovan Strauss takes it home. I called it at the beginning. I don't want to like toot my own horn or anything, but if there's not a pit stop where I can call, I'm going to call the winner here. Donovan Strauss, he's been able to adapt to all the different track conditions. He's been able to find the hardest tracks out there and take home the victory. Darlington, Dover, Knoxville, the 3 tracks we looked at and said, this is going to be where drivers are proven, and he takes home all 3. I would argue that that's the Triple Crown. Darlington, Dover, and Knoxville, 3 of the most difficult tracks. Takes all 3 of them home. Donovan Strauss, your winner.
I think Rockingham would like a word with you, Jeff McConaughey, before we completely hand out those crowns, because that will be a test in and of its own right. But for now, yeah, credit to Donovan Strauss, Josh Lee, who managed to sneak the lead away under yellow and beat old Cody Bias on a yellow flag and a yellow light, and just hung on from there.
Talk about an amazing season going for Donovan Strauss right now. He mentioned, Jeff McConaughey mentioned that Donovan Strauss with 2 wins, Darlington and Dover. Dover was the last race we broadcasted. So he is 2 for 2 now, back to back. Let's see if he can continue this streak when we go racing in 2 weeks' time.
We'll take a quick break here, but we'll come back with the post-race show, interview your top 3 finishers, and wrap up coverage from Knoxville Raceway. You're watching coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series from Podium Esports. When you want to be the best, you can't settle for the rest. There's a reason that McConaughey Setup Shop is trusted by more virtual and real-world tracks and companies than any other setup shop in iRacing. With partners such as Stafford Motor Speedway, the Nashville Fairground Speedway, Five Flag Speedway, Speed 51, and more. When you want something done right, you go to the experts at McConaughey Setup Shop.
With setups available for most series on both asphalt and dirt, built by a team of professional builders consisting of some of the top talents on the service, McConaughey Setup Shop LLC has what you need to hit the track with confidence. Head over to McConaugheySetupShop.com and learn why McConaughey Setup Shop is the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports and is partnered with some of the largest names in virtual and real racing.
And remember, at McConaughey Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories.
Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series from Knoxville Raceway in Knoxville, Iowa, where Donovan Strauss has won 2 races in a row, and he takes the checkered flag over Briar LaPrade, who equals a season's best P2. Drew Freenage comes home with the 3rd spot. Michael Carillia with the season's best run as well. He was 4th. Cody Bias finishes in the 5th spot. 6th went to Nicholas Shelton. Colin Keister was 7th. 8th to Brian Mercurio. Jordy Lopez Jr. and Dylan Jones complete the top 10, Evan.
A couple of big movers through the midfield, including Michael Finlayson, who comes home at 11th. That's plus 14 from the start. But if you've got movers and comers, you got goers. And both Kaler and Davis drop out of the top 10 to finish 12th and 13th, just ahead of Ben Nelson and Brad Wright through your top 15 positions. Big movers again, Corey Carpenter. You got Cedric Hunter, Ryan Hill with a couple of spots picked up ahead of Tanner Love and Timu Toika halfway through in P20.
Mitchell Hunt ends up in 21st. 22nd, Adam Gilliland. Talk about fallers in the race. He went from 10th to 22nd. Rounding out your top 23s, Nicholas Morse, Brandon McKissick, Seth Noel round out your top 25. Garrett Conrath, Brian Lockwood, Derek Bordeaux. An unfortunate night for the 04 machine. Same thing for Casey Tucker and Jeremy Allen. They round out your top 30, and all the way down to 35th, it's Brian Johnson, Blake McCandless, Frank DeAngelis, Garrison Hogan, and Liam Brotherton.
There's your full 35 truck rundown for this first race in the second round of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series. We now bring in your race winner for the second race running, Donovan Strauss. And just your restarts. How big were they? And especially on that last one, did you learn anything off the first 2 in the green, white, checkered, which weren't as good, to make sure that your last restart was the best of the bunch?
Yeah, Cody was nailing those restarts, and he made it hard on me. Every single restart, I was trying different things, trying to just get clear of him before I went into turn 1, because I knew if he was door to door with me, he'd have a shot at it. And I raced Cody with a lot of respect, so I wasn't going to do anything stupid. But I don't even know what to say right now. I'm at a loss for words.
This was a tight race all the way around. You pick up the lead by beating Cody Bias to the yellow midway through this race. When you took the lead and got the yellow flag and got it before he did you recognize how big that was going to be in the context of this race? Did you know that was going to end up being the pass ultimately for the win? And were you racing even in the middle of this race to try and get any opportunity, knowing that they were likely going to be few and far between?
Oh yeah, I knew as soon as I got clear of him right before the caution came, or not clear of him, but ahead of him as soon as the caution came out. I knew that was huge. Early on the race, I started in mid-pack, so I tried to just get up there and was a little behind him, and I got up close to him, and then the yellows came coming out, and I don't know. I tried to just hold him off as best I can. I knew every single time I'd have a chance to race him, it was the chance to take the lead, and well, I got it right before that yellow came out.
And I think especially in the context of today, where you announced the brand new partnership with Nutrient Ag Solutions, first race on this truck and first race for them to follow your ride in ESC, how big is it to get the win for them, for this new deal that you've got, and how important is it to establish momentum on the front end?
Yeah, I can't thank Elliot and Seth Ryder enough for helping me get this opportunity with Nutrient Ag Solutions. This is huge. Their first race on the truck to get them a win. That's storybook right there. And I can't thank them enough for giving me this outstanding opportunity to represent them in round 2. And who knows, if we get into Pro Series, maybe that'll happen again. But I just cannot thank them enough for everything they've done for me so far, along with everyone at ESC for the hard work. JD for spotting me. Seth Ryder is on my box tonight. Everyone for helping me test, Blaze Crawford, Brennan Kohler, everyone for helping me build the setup. I got my friend Garrett Maines, he's watching behind me, so that was cool. I just can't thank everyone enough for all they do.
Donovan Strauss putting a good foot forward on the road to the eNASCAR Road to Pro Contender iRacing Series. It's another win for driver number 51.
Thank you. Yeah.
we turn our attention to the Bird, the Briar, the man out of Tennessee, depending on what you call him. He's got a few nicknames, but regardless, he comes in with P2 tonight, and he is with our Josh Lee.
Well, I'm going to call him Mr. Kevin Harvick, because we had a where did he come from moment when we saw you up there running in the top 3 to come home in second place. You started in 14th, up 12 spots to end the day in second. How was that Lockdown Racing number 35 machine tonight, and how did you work your way up through the field like a lot of drivers were unable to do tonight?
The Lockdown 35 left for Billiard Ford F-150 was insane, man. I got to give a huge shout out to Colton Davis and James Edens for the help this week. Really coached me in a good way, and obviously it showed. I was able to dig through the field there. Yeah, I didn't expect to get all the way up there. I expected to move up a couple spots, but our setup, as soon as the track would get more and more worn out, it started to fly. Just had to spread my wings and fly like an eagle. But yeah, man, the more the track got wore out, the faster we went. And it just took patience, as Zach Novak made it into my head, just trying to be slow and steady with it, because that's what made the difference there, rolling the bottom.
I do hope you were singing as you were driving as well, like Kyle Busch was a couple of weeks ago at Pocono. But going back to tonight's race, you had such a good run going through in round number 1. Coming into Knoxville Raceway tonight, was there a little bit of added pressure to keep that up, or were you just going into tonight just wanting a solid finish to get started and get yourself kind of slingshotted into the second round?
Our round 1, I think it was okay. I think it could have been better. I just think I just had the wrong mindset of just trying to go out there and win every race, but I just got it into my head that it's a point situation. I have to see the bigger picture, and that showed the last couple races of round 1. We've popped off with a couple top 10s. But yeah, it was nice to have a fresh start, come in here to round 2, fresh on points and all of that, and just get a restart and try and do what I was supposed to do in round 1. But yeah, I didn't know how I was going to feel about this race, but once we did a couple C opens in the week and I seen my pace, I was confident in getting at least a top 10, but I really didn't expect a second, but hey, we're here.
So now with this second place, we head to Homestead in 2 weeks' time, then Watkins Glen, Rockingham, Texas, Bristol, and Phoenix to end out the season. Do you think you can take this second place and put it into a string of good finishes and waltz your way into the Road to Pro Contender iRacing Series come September 30th?
Man, I sure hope so. I think the confidence and momentum is definitely in my direction now. I just got to make sure I keep my head on straight and keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here in the Podium Esports booth. That is Briar LaPrade for Lockdown Racing in the number 35. Second place finish here at Knoxville Raceway, James.
I suppose in the spirit of what Pryor just said, we will fly like eagles from his interview over to Drew Friedrich, who's with Evan Pasoko.
Here we're sending by with our third place finisher here in the top split for the virtual Knoxville Raceway. And Drew, congratulations on a good result. Knew coming into this one that, most drivers were probably afraid that this was the first race for round 2, but you're a fan of this dirt stuff. You clearly saw it as an opportunity, started up front, hung out all race, and you end up with a P3. Tell us about it.
Yeah, just had a stoked setup with this truck. I mean, it was just moving, new track, old track, whatever you wanted to put it. You could run any line. So, just trying to take our time, work through the field. We got up to the top 3 there. I don't think we had a winning truck. Those Bias and Strauss were just gone. So we were kind of just holding there, looking to get a good finish, and was able to bring it home.
Obviously, I think it was a tale of 2 races, right? The guys in the back caused most of the chaos. Up front, you guys were able to search around for grip and whatnot. What was it like for you, obviously, trying to keep the fenders on it? It's been a while since we've seen a Road to Pro race on dirt.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Everybody out there is so even. The competitive level here is just insane. So it's so hard when you're running down people that are this good. It's hard to pass. It's hard to really do anything, and that's kind of why we have all the cautions. I think it's just so hard to pass. You make boneheaded moves, and sometimes that causes crashes. But it was a lot of fun. We had that long run. That was fun pedaling the car at the end there when the track slipped over. I think you saw a lot of the guys that was really comfortable on dirt shine there, and that's kind of how it was out there.
Of course, you guys advance into this round two, 66 of the points for the top 70 cutoff. Did you put a lot of pressure on yourself to get a lot of points in this one and to be able to work forwards going into the next round from a position of strength? I mean, how big is this for your efforts?
Put in a ton of practice. I know at this level, you're going to have to put a ton of practice in every single week. So that's kind of what we're starting with. And yeah, I mean, I felt good on the dirt. I felt good with a track. You're really going to have to pedal and, you know, kind of let off the gas and get back on it. So I was looking forward to this one. Wanted to get a good run, but you never know on dirt. You can get turned running second with a lap to go, and I'm sure some of these guys are having good runs and had that happen. So it's a big question mark coming in, but you know, I'm happy to get it. And yes, we wanted to, but we really weren't expecting this.
Turkey Intermediate track coming up for the next time out in 2 weeks' time. We go to the virtual Homestead Miami Speedway. You got to get out of the dirt state of mind. You got to reset and focus. What are going to be the keys to finding success in Florida?
A lot of practice, a lot of testing. Big thanks to Donovan Strauss, Elliott Sadler Esports, and the low-line guys, just how much work they do to get these setups. I mean, they're race-winning setups, as you see with Donovan every week. And I mean, I'm just lucky enough to drive them, so it's getting enough laps to help them out with the setup and to practice for myself. So that's the plan. I got to do a lot of group practice with how the aero is at these trucks, so that's the plan going into next week.
Well, we'll let you get out of here and get a head start on that one. Drew, appreciate you sticking around and chatting, man. Congratulations.
Guys, have a good week.
Your P3 finisher, James, tonight from Knoxville. Drew Friedage, P3. Good effort for the driver of the one car.
I think he'll like his starting position in round two a lot more than his finishing position in round one, where you remember he had a rough go of it in the top split at Dover to round out the first round. It was touch and go as to whether or not he was going into round number two. But P3 here, big time points. I don't think he's going to complain all that much. I think for drivers who didn't have good luck, it's back to something more normal. And even in the sense of normal, a very good normal so far as I'm concerned. In Homestead, Miami, 2 weeks time. And Jeff McConey, that's, I think, amongst the mile and a half, maybe the most universally liked track in the service, because you could run so many different lanes and make it work.
It's funny that you throw that to me, because I am known on the record for not having any love for Homestead Miami Speedway. I think the facility's great. I've been there my life. I cannot drive that place for the life of me. If you want the human equivalent in a race car of a dumpster, throw me in a car at Homestead. I can't find any speed there. But that's why I'm up here in the booth, telling people why they use the pit strategy they do and not down there racing this year at least. So yeah, Homestead is definitely loved by a lot of people. You can find speed all over the track. You can run the top, you can run the middle, you can run the bottom. Especially after iRacing's last update a few months ago, you can really run the wall there. You've got that cushion and you can find speed at the top. You can also wear out your tires very easily there if you're not careful. So it's going to be a very interesting Homestead race. I think we're going to see a lot of people up towards the wall. Keep an eye on Donovan Strauss. He's proven that he's quick at those very difficult tracks. It reminds me quite a bit of Darlington, where you've got those steeply banked corners. They're almost kind of sharp in the way you're getting around them. I think we're going to see elements of the Dover and the Darlington setup come back into play there for Homestead for Donovan, where he's found success in the past. Keep an eye out on a lot of these other drivers, though. Homestead Miami is a toss-up track. It can go any way, and anyone could come out of there in victory lane. And we're seeing a lot of drivers now racing against people they're not exactly used to running around. Someone that really impressed me tonight was Benjamin Nelson in the 35. Drove from 23rd to 14th, but he was all the way back towards 30th for a while before he worked his way back up. That's someone else you should keep your eye on. He wasn't up in the top two splits all too much. We didn't mention his name much during these broadcasts, at least for the top split ones at all. So now he's up here running with these guys. I think there's going to be a couple of underdogs that we haven't really seen here because Knoxville's such a toss-up. But put them at a place like Homestead where they're a little bit more at home, we could see someone that we haven't talked about too much come out of here in victory lane.
There's that side of it. There's also the other side of it, Josh Lee, which is who can stop Donovan Strauss, because right now that number 51 truck looks absolutely unstoppable. And oh, by the way, for those who got the chance to tune into Podium 2, Austin Yarbrough won the second race of this first round of the, or rather second race of the first race, second session of the first race, second round. We still have to get used to it too. So we're working through it as much as you all are. But regardless, Austin Yarborough, your winner in the second session, as opposed to the first race of the second round. And guess what car number he was driving tonight? 51. Something to be said about that, I think. No?
And I will say 2 different number fonts as well. Kyle Busch Motorsports number font on Donovan Strauss, and is the Days of Thunder number font over on the Austin Yarborough machine. But over there, it was Austin Yarborough grabbing the win, and it seemed like he's sort of continuing on where he was in round number 1, and Donovan Strauss is definitely continuing where he was from round number 1. But the huge question for Strauss now is, can they keep this up? We've seen continued success for that team. We've seen them win on 3 racetracks, all 3 difficult racetracks like Jeff McConey mentioned earlier, but 3 different racetracks. Darlington, a bit of a hybrid between a short track and an intermediate. Dover, more of a short track, about 1 mile in length. And then you have Knoxville Raceway, the most unique track we have on the schedule, it being a completely different surface than anything else we'll race on this season. So if the 51 can keep up this continued success on a variety of different racetracks, they're going to feel right at home here in round number 2, and they're going to keep this momentum up and be in the contender iRacing series for Road to Pro at the end of the season. They just need to keep it up, and they need to keep this momentum. I think the team can do it. Just depends on if Strauss can learn on those old lessons and get that win at the end of the season.
There's that side of points, Evan, and then there's the other side. And if you're somebody who did not have luck tonight, if you were a Liam Brotherton, a Garrison Hogan, a Frank DeAngelis, a Blake McCandless, a Brian Johnson, a Jeremy Allen, does the bad luck tonight change your approach at Homestead, knowing how short this is? I mean, we're already down to 6 races to go in the season, so there's not a lot of time to make up for mistakes if you have one bad race. So are you now back against the wall for the rest of this? Sort of like it was the beginning of the playoff era where, you know, if you wrecked at New Hampshire, you had to fight the whole rest of the playoffs just to get in the front? Or do you still have a chance if you can string together the consistent finishes that you know you're capable of?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? You got guys like DeAngelis and Johnson and some of those guys towards the rear. You know, they wreck out of this race, but they were in the 20s the whole time, right? They knew realistically coming into this race, it's not going to be one that I'm going to get a host of points. Now you look at somebody like a McCandless who started 5th in this race and wrecks out. Maybe he's feeling it a little bit more, right? Because they saw this as an opportunity, just like a Farinas, one of those drivers who could excel on dirt would be really feeling it if they felt like they blew their opportunity. So I think that, you know, everybody in the field has to treat a round this short with that playoff-esque sense of urgency. But I don't think that tonight's result is going to change anybody's opinion. There might be a few guys who feel a little bit bummed out. There's going to be some drivers who, on the opposite end, feel like, hey, I got out of this with a lot more points than I was expecting, but I don't think it changes the game plan. You know it's short. You know how hard it was to get top 70, let alone top 20. You have to go out there and give it every little bit, and that's why I kind of excuse some of the chaos towards the back, because we've already seen that sense of urgency 20 laps into race number 1. So that's only going to continue on.
Only going to get wilder and wilder from here as we get set to head to Homestead for the second race of this second round of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series. But events to tell you about in the world of iRacing and Podium Esports before we get to Homestead. Coming up on Sunday night, the season opener for the MPI Cup Series from Daytona in the Next Gen car. They'll spend the entirety of Season 4 racing the Next Gen, so you'll get a sense of how that car may race when they debut, or it debuts rather, in the Cup Series next season. That broadcast will start at 9:15 p.m. Eastern on the Podium Esports Twitch channel, and then Monday Night Racing's All-Star Race from Texas Motor Speedway with the Radical SR8 comes your way at 7:45 p.m. free race, 8 p.m. race broadcast next Monday night, July 12th. On the Podium 2 Twitch channel, as well as the Podium Facebook, Podium YouTube pages, and the Monday Night Racing Twitter feed. Then the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series is back in action from New Hampshire. Their annual trip up to New England kicks off at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time next Tuesday, July 13th. You'll find that broadcast on the iRacing Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. Before the PCA Sim Racing Team Racing Series comes back, they'll head to Spa at 8 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday, July 24th. Or July 21st, rather, on the PCA Sim Racing YouTube channel. And then we're back in action with the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series from Homestead Miami Speedway, Thursday night, July 22nd, 2 weeks from tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern start time. on twitch.tv/Podium Esports and twitch.tv/Podium2. A big thanks to everybody that made tonight's broadcast possible. For our team behind the scenes at Podium Esports, Gary Sexton, Cisco Scaramuza, and John Theodore. For our camera builder, Dougie Beard, our producer, Ryan Bauer, our pit reporter, Justin Prince, and our team in the booth, Jeff McConey, Josh Lee, Evan Pasoko, Ryan Bauer, behind all the shots and sights and sounds that you've seen this evening as producer. My name is James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from Knoxville Raceway. We will see you down in Miami in 2 weeks' time.